The last value on my list, my top 4, was trustworthiness. And I think that's important to me because people can like you for any number of reasons, some of which could be wrong. People can admire you for any number of reasons, some of which could be wrong, but people only ever trust you if they truly feel that you can be responsible for those tasks and activities that are placed in your care. So I feel like trust is a genuine value. There's never, when somebody trusts you, it's not out of self-interest or out of, there's nothing in them, there's nothing in it for them if they trust you. So that rounds out my top 4 values. And again, integrity predominates to a freakish degree. Why do I think that way? I honestly do not know. I do not have a particularly stringent upbringing. We went to church until my parents decided they were tired of it, and then we stopped. My parents were not ethics taskmasters at home. My mom, in fact, was born and raised in the Philippines, as a developing country is very typical in their cultural ethical standards. You know, if you've never been to a developing country or been familiar with it, typically government is extremely corrupt. Adherence to government requirements or the system is basically seen as foolish. Things like cheating the government, working around the rules and restrictions, those are commonplace. It's not considered immoral to do that because the government itself is corrupt. Loyalty to your family is a primary value, and cheating the government, getting benefits to which you're not entitled, that is business as usual. That's what you do to survive, okay? My dad was a government employee for most of his life. He was kind of more like myself. He was wired like me, but I don't think I learned it from him. It's only in retrospect, looking back, it's like, geez, I've turned out like my dad. So really, I don't know how my values, how they came to lie the way they do. I really don't have any insight into that. What effect do my beliefs have in the context of my current job assignment? It's significant. I think it's significant in law enforcement. And when I started in my career as a patrol officer and working my way up, at first, my perception is that my emphasis on integrity really helped me. New officers do a lot of stuff to screw up. To this day, they're doing dumb stuff. Things that we look at as maybe ethical lapses. You post pictures of yourself drinking on Facebook. You do dumb stuff in uniform. You maybe put yourself down for overtime that you didn't work, or you use the city vehicle for personal business. All this stuff that young officers a lot of times trip up on, to me, it was unthinkable. So early on in my career, I think my standards protected me. They helped me remain employed. They helped me progress in my career. But I'm finding that the higher up one goes, the more useful I think it is to be able to not adjust your ethical standards, but be more open to the thought that perhaps the standards you hold yourself to are not the standards that you should hold other people to. When I was a first-line supervisor, I started becoming responsible for administrative reviews for IAs, and I started noticing that although when my investigation was finished, the strength of the investigation was well received, the recommendations a lot of times were not. And I started to get the perception that if people asked my opinion, what should we do on this? What they were doing is they were using my opinion as kind of the far right benchmark, like what's the worst case scenario?
You were one end of the continuum.
Exactly. They were checking me out as one rail. Because I've noticed that the decision making usually fell to the left of what I had recommended. Not that I took that personally, but it was something that I would note, like, I'm not, like I said, it's kind of like swimming upstream a lot of times. But I'm okay with that, because all you can do is tell them what you know and what you think. And after that, it's in somebody else's hands. But now it's coming to the point where I'm sort of, I would consider myself in my agency to be middle management, and I'm knocking on the door of upper management. And so I think my challenge going forward is going to be how to apply ethical decision-making processes and protocols in an environment where I may need to accept that what I feel is the right thing may not necessarily be the right thing. And I think that is going to be a challenge for me, because I do see things in black and white.
Very good, thank you. Questions, observations, comments? And we're hoping we generate some conversation about each of these.
I think it's pretty ballsy to say that you were able to discount a guy's personal life when his child died completely and just focus on that. I think that's ballsy on your part. I don't.
They used another word. I'll just let you know.
Yeah, but that. Although I think it's big of you to be able to admit that, I don't necessarily agree with it. But.
And neither would most people.
Right.
Like I said, that was a perfect example of a situation where I knew I was on the outer limits.
Sure.
And without going into the circumstances of the offense, it wasn't just like regular tardiness. But when they came to me to report it, they were like, and I just want to tell you this off the record. I was like, oh God, here we go. And no, it never, you're absolutely right. It was not, my recommendations were not at all, I mean, they weren't completely discounted, but it was like, thank you for your input. Now we know where the outer limits are, and we're gonna bring that back into the now.
But I can kind of admire that. We have a supervisor who looks at the situation and decides whether or not the tardiness or the absenteeism based off a person's personal life. And he lost his child. This person just went through a divorce. This person just lost their parents. And so you had someone sit in the supervisory position picking which personal life situation is going to dictate how I'm going to address this person's behavior. And so when you had somebody who was disciplined, was aware of the other people's situation, grieved the fact of what happened to them, and you have the supervisor sitting inside of a grievance panel or briefing about why you made this decision, then the decision got reversed because you did not apply the same standards to the other situations that you were trying to apply.
This is my take on that. I think the supervisor failed because he probably didn't address or pay attention to his personal issues until it got to a detrimental point in his professional life. And so, what we need to do is hold our bosses more responsible, and I say this mostly in the fire, and I would probably say the police side of things. We need to be watching out for those changes in our folks.
Right.
And because everybody's different, everybody's circumstances are different, everybody's upbringing is different, and I think we can do a better job as leaders by paying attention to our folks and understanding our folks and addressing it before it gets to critical mass.
Right.
Before we, there's more that Trevor and I could do well before it becomes a problem, so that it never becomes a problem. But we don't teach that, and we don't set those expectations, I think, in large degree.
So I agree with you, but they do teach us in leadership, when they get us ready, to look for the underlying problem.
Yeah.
And if you had a average employee and all of a sudden things start going wrong, being tardy, what have you, they have pause. There's nothing to look at the big picture.
They might have taught
That's why we
you.
have EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. We're supposed to be looking at that kind of stuff. But I agree with you, the supervisor should identify something was wrong and address the issues before it got to the level where you got.
I'm gonna push back just a little bit, because, and I didn't give up a whole lot of the situation, but there was grief counseling for, not just for him, for the whole department. There was EAP, it was refused. There was the offer of private counseling, if he didn't feel comfortable with EAP, that was refused. So in that particular situation, and not that this affected my decision-making, but just in defense of my agency, there was an awful lot of support, some of which was accepted, a lot of which was not. And, you know, in retrospect, that was probably part of the problem. But until his behavior gets to the point where you have to take him offline, you can't force somebody to take advantage of the resources that you're offering them. If they say, look, I'm fine, I'm doing fine, and so far his performance does not indicate that he's gone over the top, you know, and that's in defense of my agency. For myself, even if he had done all those things, would I have made a different recommendation? Probably not, because I can be pretty hardcore, it has to be said.
I want to move us a little bit away, well, go ahead, and then I want to move us a little bit away from the specific case, and talk a little bit about this sort of value of integrity. Go ahead, and you got your hand up too.
So I'm not gonna get, I wouldn't focus so much on this specific case, but take that set of circumstances, but it doesn't make any difference, take that set of circumstances. I think you're gonna have a very hard time moving beyond the position you're in until you can find a way to look at the broader picture and not what is so important to you, but what is so important to the agency as a whole. And that's a tough thing to do. I know there are many times there are things that I may not agree 100% with in myself that this is probably the perfect way to handle this. It's maybe not the best way to handle this in some regards, but what does it mean for the entire agency? So you look at the offense, going to John's point, all that stuff needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed in lieu of this. You still have to address what's sitting there. How it got there doesn't make a difference. It's there. So I look at the mitigating circumstances around it. I look at the violation that I'm being asked to look at. And then I really have to take a look, what am I trying to achieve? What's the outcome for the agency? Am I looking to terminate this person? Am I looking to rehabilitate this person? And I have to think about the impact of the broader group. Because depending on how that goes, it can have real impact as far as how the rest of the officers perceive equity within the agency and how we treat people. And you know as well as I do in IA, you don't release that information. You can't talk about the specifics. This guy could be an absolute loser, and you had every reason to pop him. But if he's salvageable, then what are we going to do to salvage him? And two, how are we going to address that in the broader context of the agency? And I think you always have to sort of look at both of those. And sometimes it means setting aside what you personally think would be the absolute way to go. I mean, I give you credit for the fact that you want to take a very it's almost with blinders. You want to take a very, here's what you did, this is the way you offered to you, and regardless of all these other facts, it doesn't make any difference. You were wrong, and you were ethically wrong. And if you asked me that when I was a young guy getting out of the Marine Corps, I probably would agree with it. Not anymore. Not if you're going to be able to manage that entire agency. So I think you got to look at every single one of those components and how do they balance out against each other when you make that decision.
A little bit later this morning, I'll be sharing with you some of those frameworks for ethical analysis and decision-making, and you've actually, in what you said, you've begun to build that framework where you talk about, so, you know, what are the facts, what are the circumstances, which are sometimes different from the facts, or at least facts that are beyond the specific case. What are we trying to accomplish? What's the right thing for the employee? What's the right thing for the organization? What's the symbolic impact of what I'm about to do, and how's that going to be seen and viewed? So all those things, I think, are considerations. You have your hand up, I think. He hit it.
Jay hit some of that. I had an experience of attending mandated training. It was countywide, and what I learned by sitting in a room with people who are not in public safety is that throughout the county, there are people that are promoted to positions that have no knowledge of what supervision or management is all about. They were promoted strictly because they raised their hand and they had a skill set. And
or they're the best technical people at doing the technical stuff.
Their skill set, correct. And because of some things that happened in General County is why the county executive faced with mandated training for everyone with regards to performance management. They brought in contractors, outsiders, and just listening to some of the conversations, and people struggled with ideas of performance management and how to, you know, at what point do you get involved with someone with regards who's struggling and how do you deal with that and all that, and the things that, as Jack mentioned, we received a lot of that training by attending in-service training or supervisors training put on within the police department, I'm sure in public safety and general police and fire, before you get promoted, you try to take some of that training so that you can learn those things. But other people in General County don't get that training, so they struggle with just sitting down, even giving someone a performance evaluation. They struggle with some of that stuff. So it's kind of weird in that respect that we expect people to know these things, and I guess the lesson is that
They don't
always know. Right.
So, I'm not trying to, part of this conversation is just to kind of have the kind of conversation that we can use to essentially model the conversations we should be having in the workplace with the people that we work with as colleagues, the people that we supervise, the people we report to. I mean, these are sort of conversations that we should have built around these sort of core values or core ethical principles. So what I really want to do this morning is model that. We define integrity, and I'm really going to sort of ask you for your definition. We define it as the courage to consistently do what is right, honest, and fair. I don't know if you think that's a good definition of integrity. I don't know that it comes out of the text, the dictionary exactly. But the courage to consistently do what is right, honest, and fair. How would you define integrity in the context of your paper, your value set?
I think that definition is a good one. I like the inclusion of courage in there because I think that is a component. Not just to know what the right thing is, but to then go ahead and do it. I guess I'm a little bit uneasy with the inclusion of fair because that's kind of a subjective standard. What one person thinks is fair may not be what another person thinks is fair. But if you take fairness to mean justice,
But ethics, I mean, this whole discussion is
Sort
subjective.
of a little bit subjective. What I'm just going to throw out there, for what it's worth. I mean, I think in your own paper you said, this may get in your way. I mean, this reliance. So you get that, and you kind of, I think, gave a context to that observation. I'd like to suggest that as you think about the application of your core values in the workplace, that you want to be ethical and you want to lead in setting a model for ethical behavior, that maybe the gray area is not will you have to compromise your integrity? Maybe the gray area is within that definition of integrity. Does behavior consistent with the value of integrity change when you're a supervisor or the chief compared to the behaviors that would model integrity if you were a firefighter one or a police officer one? So you're not necessarily having to sacrifice integrity. You're just having to come to grips with an evolving definition. I just asked that. I'm not saying that that's the case. I just sort of put that out there.
Well, I would definitely suggest to you that your ethical compass is very much dictated by one, where you are in life, but two, where you are in the world. I mean, the ethics that we want to perceive are not the same ethics that you're going to get in Germany. They're not the same ethics I'm going to get in El Salvador. They're going to be different. And so what is the norm in whatever culture you're in? I think that centers a lot of what we think is ethical behavior. I was listening to her talking about where her parents grew up. That behavior, which we might find abhorrent because we trust our government, if you actually don't trust your government and your ethical foundation is built upon that culture, maybe it isn't so unethical. Maybe it's how they survive the circumstances. I don't know, but I think there's a lot of flexibility.
Anyway, food for thought. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for going first. Who's next?
I'd like to go next.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I get this?
PowerPoint.
I need to use
Yeah,
a piece.
well, this is brief.
Stop.
No. This is,
Look at that.
Just a little brief, little 3-minute video. I want to get in here.
Let me just do this.
Hey, what's up?
I had to push your stuff right.
Well, I need to, yeah, I don't know if they're.
Way up front. Get on up there.
You take your paper and move right to
I don't know how to do that, I know how to do that.
I think the last class, I'm gonna go get cracked chicken to lunch.
Is this one?
Oh, that's where we started off.
It's okay with
Yeah.
you, we'll just do
It's good.
this.
I wasn't gonna miss this class, this is the last.
It is the last class. We'll come back here for some presentations if I ever do anything. But
And you have access to internet.
Just go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she keeps putting down.
Probably for later, I got it tomorrow, but I just need that.
You can have it whenever you want.
Yeah.
Chief.
no, a little later, but. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Hold on.
You guys are gonna love my presentation. Very excited.
I wish I had
Very
it right
You
now.
need me to just play that?
Can't work.
You know, memorialize this class, I had it. No way I was gonna get this class.
No, right here. Just a little something.
So, have we got any direction on when our thing's gonna be?
Okay, you ready?
Sometime in 2006.
So, we're going.
Yeah, this is actually,
It's along with all my other grades that I haven't
For your
received.
video.
a preview.
Put their lives
We'll get the volume up.
But a growing number of law officers in Georgia are putting their careers on the line by posting offensive photos and messages on the web. Channel 2's Tom Regan with
You gotta get the volume up, Jack?
Yeah, it's on,
It's
it's on the
all-
control
It's all
panel.
way, it's all way up.
It's all the way up.
Then go to the, I mean, your volume's pretty good.
We can hear it from back there.
You can hear it?
Yeah.
Chief Technology Officer, Arlington
I'm
County.
not an echo. So I can talk,
do,
I'm trying to
do
get it
the
so I can get
function
in my
of that
office.
volume
because
if
it's
you
down.
do it, but I'm just.
how police gone wild can have an impact on public
Just,
safety.
just like 3 minutes.
Just the director of the state
Very
agency
brief.
that
5
certifies
minutes.
police officers says they have never seen anything like this before. Cases are piling up on cops accused of posting pictures or messages that can not only harm their reputation and their agency's reputation, but
do
damage
that.
their
I just wanted to get the tube lights off.
The web has become a potent crime-fighting tool for police to catch crooks. But social media sites can be a double-edged sword when cops are caught on the web crossing the line.
They used to say there wouldn't be many things that make my job right. One of these pictures made my job right.
Ken Vance of Georgia's Peace Officer Standards and Training showed me just some of the dozens of cases his agency has acted on. He said one West Georgia cop posted this picture on his Facebook page after he quit one department to go to another.
Came back and posed on top of a police car, urinating on the police car.
What I was told is this officer had a very promising career. Not anymore. This Savannah cop is also under scrutiny because of this post of him taking a picture of 2 women posing provocatively on a city street. After investigating, Post often yanks the law enforcement credentials of cops behaving badly on the web. The usual explanation they hear?
When I was drunk, I didn't know anybody else would see this other than the person. I said, do you not understand that this goes everywhere, World Wide Web?
And everywhere includes behind bars. Listen to this story of what a guard found on an inmate's cell phone.
While going through the phone, because it was illegally held by the inmate, he came across the photograph of the woman with the 2 police officers.
The half-dressed woman was posing with former Clarkston police officers in uniform at their patrol car. We had to mask most of the image to show it on TV.
The Police Chiefs Association said that this was being circulated in jail. Right up front of the cell phone. I was told that. How do you feel about that? Oh, I reread it. I didn't know nothing about it. So embarrassing. Oh, yeah.
Former Officer Thaddeus Lloyd told me the picture was taken years ago by a stranger in a parking lot near a nightclub. He said he and his partner were off duty.
Who's the one? Some popular porn star. A porn star? Yeah, she was at that club that night.
Inappropriate internet shenanigans can not only reflect poorly on an officer and his agency. Juries have dismissed charges in criminal cases where a law officer's testimony and credibility were impeached by his web postings.
It could hurt the prosecution. It could lose a good case that everybody's worked hard on because of one act of stupidity.
stupid. Mr. Lloyd told me he didn't post the picture, and he never expected it to come back to haunt him so many years later.
What do you think is the moral of the story? Like they always say, you know, you can't take something that might hit you later.
Well, even though that picture was taken years ago, Georgia Post says there is no statute of...
So that, coupled with this document, I basically did an internet search for a bunch of stuff. Cops got in trouble for posting stuff. We had some cops here that were on a training. They were attending some training, and they ended up at a restaurant. This is a waitress at the restaurant. They took her out there and let her pose with their rifle. Obviously, that's a problem. You got Indianapolis State Trooper, his Facebook post. He's pointing his pistol at the head of a buddy there. They're obviously drinking, they're drunk. You know, obviously, all of this stuff is a problem. It's the point I'm trying to make here with this little presentation. And with that, I'll go into
You might be F.
NF.
I don't know, but if it lets you take it out, yeah, maybe F.
So now I'll go into my
You
personal.
stay up there, go back
I got it.
there. I'm gonna turn.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So, my personal ethical philosophy, in a phrase, is I try to do the right thing the right way for the right reason whenever possible. After sitting down for 5 minutes and giving this topic some thought, I thought it was an appropriate way to sum up my personal perspective on ethical decision making. I thought about how I was raised, how I was educated both formally and informally, what I learned by watching other people, and how I interact with my friends, family, and colleagues at work. I'll admit that I've been on autopilot reference this topic for some time, in large part because of what I do for a living, and the fact that I've tried to set a good example for my children, who, like most kids, are a reflection upon their home environment. And I also realize that the older I get, the more I sound like my parents, something that was recently mentioned here. Without getting any details about my childhood, I'll share the fact that I had a lot of responsibility early in life. I was held to a different standard than my friends and my siblings. I was always held accountable for what I did and what I said. At my core, I have a strong orientation toward public service. Having personally witnessed a lot of stuff early in my life has drawn me to helping others. And I just point out the opposite of, my philosophy is that of someone that I had an occasion to have a conversation with, which was a carjacker, who mentioned to me that when he decided that his life no longer mattered, that he also felt that nobody else's life mattered, so he didn't have a problem with harming people, because he just didn't care about himself, so he didn't care about anyone else. And for me also, my commitment to living an ethical life reaffirms my humanity. I love and value my life, and to me it's easy for me to understand that everyone is important to someone else because of that. With regards to ethics, and I'll frame it out regarding my relationships, with regards to my family, my relationship with my wife and kids, I consider myself a good role model and provider. I consider myself a role model for my children. And I don't take anything for granted. I got where I am by hard work, good luck combined with sacrifice and determination. Life's hard. I try not to make it hard by making bad decisions, like some of those people that you saw up there in the video. My closest friends are a lot like me. I think I kind of mirror myself with the selection of the people that I'm closest to. My neighbors and community associations somewhat discreet with respect to who I choose to associate with. I avoid situations that usually lead to ethical dilemmas. I clearly understand that there's a difference between being friendly and being friends with people. Those are two different things. Some people struggle with that. And at work, it's the same as the first three. At work, I'm in a leadership role, and accountability is important. And I gave some examples of people that I believe that were ethical and unethical. In my opinion, I'll throw out as an example of someone who I believe is ethical is Pope Francis by his works. Without, talking about the religious context, just by his actions, shortly after taking on his position, going out and washing the feet of prisoners and stripping away all of the grandiose glamour that his predecessors had, riding around in the, Volvo as opposed to, or a Volkswagen as opposed to a Mercedes and stuff like that. I think by his actions, he's trying to demonstrate that he's a trustworthy individual and that his heart is in the right place. We recently had a governor that was indicted, federal charges that were resulted out of conflict of interest. Whether or not, without judging him, whether or not you believe he did what he did, it's obvious that he created an ethical dilemma by accepting something and then affording someone a level of influence that not everyone else had. So it's one of those deals where you need to not only avoid evil, but also avoid the appearance of evil. I think when you're in certain positions, because people make assumptions without the facts. There's also a guy by the name of Mark Zuckerberg, the guy that's in charge of Facebook or whatever. And I saw the movie Facebook, which I'm not sure whether or not it's totally true, but he supposedly was sued for stealing the idea of Facebook when he was over at Harvard. That's unethical conduct. In the movie, the people who he stole it from, twin brothers, fraternity guys, appealed or grieved his stealing of the idea to the president of the university, who basically told them to go pack sand or whatever, that he was just being an entrepreneur. Later in life, after he amassed his wealth, Zuckerberg's out. He's a philanthropist now, so some may think that he's ethical because of his philanthropy, but I look at what he did years ago by stealing the idea of Facebook as something that, in my opinion, makes him an unethical person. And in my role at work, I'm responsible for a group of individuals who investigate allegations of misconduct by employees. Given the lack of trust in government and scrutiny of law enforcement across the nation, I consider my role in upholding the reputation of our agency as key to building confidence and trust in our community. By holding myself to a high ethical standard, I can serve as a role model for others in my shop, people that I work with, and throughout the agency. And when the chief took office back in 2013, one of the first things that he did was issue a revised policy. He revised a policy on ethics and integrity, which he calls General Order 1. Shortly thereafter, he made it clear that he would fire anyone who violated the policy, and he would not promote anyone who had a pre-existing sustained violation in any form, no matter how old it was. And as you can suspect, that went over like a fart in church. Lots of people made it clear that they weren't happy with the decision. A small number of people who were highly qualified on existing promotional lists were directly impacted by the decision. But like in any organization, those people had a lot of friends and associates who saw the decision as punitive and double punishment because they had already been disciplined for their conduct. And later, the policy was followed up by mandated training provided by the commanders throughout the department, which had to be documented. Shortly after the policy was announced and training began, advertisement for promotional processes were posted for deputy chief, major, and first lieutenant within the department. Each announcement had the following phrase: to be appointed, eligible shall meet Class A medical status and be free of any disciplinary actions that impact promotional ability, including but not limited to any sustained truthfulness violations. So therein, the chief was laying down the marker, basically saying moving forward that he wasn't promoting anyone who was in violation of the General Order 1. The ethics and integrity policy became very real for many others who had no interest whatsoever in seeking promotion when it was extended to training assignments throughout the department. The chief ordered the review of the internal affairs records for everyone assigned to the Criminal Justice Academy, as well as everyone who applied for field training instructor program for prior allegations that could be classified as General Order 1 violations, and some of those people were removed from their positions. Finally, the policy has been included in almost every position vacancy announcement over the last 18 months with some variation of the following statement, which is that in any announcement for the position vacancy, eligible candidates shall be free of any disciplinary actions that affect their ability for this assignment, whatever that assignment is, including but not limited to violations of General Order 1. And it's clear that our agency has established a clear standard for employee conduct in spite of the clear, unambiguous policy that unethical conduct will not be tolerated. There's still occasions where people do stupid stuff, and they have here over the last 18 months or so. One of the most recent casualties to this particular policy claimed that he just didn't think it was serious when asked why he lied, and he lied about something that he shouldn't have. He thought it was, by lying, he thought it was the easiest thing to do at the time. Another little piece there, he basically said that he was just trying to get the supervisor off his back. The supervisor was questioning about whether or not he did something. He questioned him a number of times, and he basically just wanted the supervisor to get off his back, so he lied. It's difficult watching people fall down and having to struggle with the consequences of making poor decisions. I comfort myself in knowing that most of the people who've left our agencies land on their feet with other agencies that have different standards or other occupations. You give up a lot of rights and privileges when you wear a badge. Trust takes time to earn and it's easily lost. And I'm glad I've had the opportunity to reflect upon my own